Welcome to my presentations on the coronavirus, COVID-19. This is a series of 5 presentations and this is part 1. Now let me introduce myself first. I'm a professor of intensive care medicine in Amsterdam. I'm a clinical pharmacologist and I have no potential conflict of interest to declare. This presentation is not sponsored. If you're interested in my scientific work, please have a look at the PubMed website where you can use these simple searches. You can find my popular work among others on Twitter, but this is mostly Dutch and probably all Dutch to you. I will discuss with you something about the history, the virus itself, some disease characteristics, the transmission and epidemiology of the virus, the protection of the healthcare workers and also the protection of the population, treatment options, and in that respect I will discuss some of the evidence coming from trials, the outcome of the disease in patients, and finally the prevention and vaccination. Well, I think it's not completely unlikely that you will find these presentations quite boring at some point, so please stop the presentation at that moment and have a look at a very funny video in between. It all started in December 2019 with the outbreak in Wuhan of 41 documented patients. The incubation time, which is the time between the transmission of the virus and the first clinical signs, was estimated to be between 2 and 14 days. And patients had signs of fever, cough, dyspnea and other flu-like symptoms. And this is how the picture looked in February 18, 2020, when we still believed very much in Europe that the COVID-19 would be contained in the Asian countries. And although there were some red dots in the European countries, it was still believed that it would not come to Europe. And there were at that time 73,000 confirmed cases. But it became clear very soon, and this is a situation on March 11 in 2020, when there were 114,000 confirmed cases, and as you can see, the dots are everywhere in the world. And it was therefore that the WHO Director General's opening remarks at the media briefing on COVID-19 was, we have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic. And since then our lives has dramatically changed, as you are all aware of. And this was a situation in January 2021 with 85 million global cases and almost 2 million deaths. And you can see per country the number of cases and also the number of deaths. As you can see, in the Netherlands, over 11,000 deaths. Now this all has to do with the characteristics how the disease spreads, and that is an exponential increase. So it means that one patient can contaminate 2 or even more patients who will then contaminate each, again 2 or 3 patients. And so you will have a very rapid increase of the number of contaminated people. And this is why it is an exponential increase. And of course there are also some death cases. Now it might be difficult to imagine what it means exactly, the exponential growth. Now let us imagine that we have a still water like here, where we have water lilies that double the surface of this water every day. And if the situation today is such that all of the water is completely covered by water lilies, what was the situation yesterday? And the answer is, of course, that yesterday's it was still half empty. So you would imagine yesterday that the situation was not that bad. But related to this exponential growth, it was in fact already very bad. We have found some new names for this virus. The virus is called SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, and it is abbreviated as SARS-CoV-2. The disease is called coronavirus disease COVID-19 2019. Now, what do you need to know is that until recently, and I looked up my college books about that, is that the coronavirus infection was considered as a very mild infection that would only give rise to a common cold. However, this came to an end in 2003 when we were confronted with the SARS coronavirus, where a severe respiratory illness was seen with also deaths, and but we were able to eliminate this by quarantine, and the disease didn't even reach the Netherlands, for instance. In the 2010s, we were confronted in the world with MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, and in 2013 there were 40 confirmed cases. It was transmitted by camels, but the transmission took place only very low levels related to the poor transmission of the virus, and not from human to human. Now, this was all different with the coronavirus 2 causing COVID-19. It is an animal virus. It's probably coming from bats. It circulates in animals and can jump occasionally to humans. But as we all know, is the human-to-human spread is very rapid, and the impact of control measures is still not completely clear, and the required extent is yet still uncertain. Now, the situation in January 2021 is that we have 85 million confirmed cases and almost 2 million deaths. So we do not need to talk very long about this, that it is really serious business. And here you can see the incidence of the coronavirus deaths in the European Economic Area. And it is given per country per 100,000 population. And you can see there are huge differences between the countries. It can be as high as 156 in Belgium to 26 in Germany. And the Netherlands has 58 deaths per 100,000 people. So have a look at your own country. Now, the COVID-2 SARS virus is a single-stranded RNA virus with almost 30,000 nucleotides. It uses a specific receptor, which is the ACE2 receptor, angiotensin-converting enzyme 2 receptor, to enter the cell. And the affinity with this receptor is described as being 10-fold stronger than the affinity of the SARS-CoV-1. At the right you see a very schematic picture of the virus. It is of note that the ACE2 receptors are present in the lungs, in the gastrointestinal tract, in the kidneys, and also in the blood vessels. Now, the picture on the right, which represents the virus, if we have a look at this picture, the S stands for the protein spikes, the E is the envelope, M is the membrane, and N is the nucleocapsid, which is the structure that encloses the genetic material of the virus. And the red line is the single-stranded RNA. At the lower end of the lower corner of the right corner of the slide, you can see some references of some papers that I would very much advise you to read if you're interested in the virus and know more about it. Now, how is the infection or replication taking place? Well, there is first, at the upper right of this drawing, you can see that the virus binds to the receptor and a membrane fusion takes place, which leads to the release of the viral genome into the cytoplasm of the host cell. And if you follow the arrows, you can see that the formation of non-structural proteins, NSP, is responsible for the formation of the replicase transcriptase complex, which will lead to the formation of this. When this replicase transcriptase complex is formed, it will take care that there will be a negative chain template will be made that is used to make new genomic RNA of the virus. And finally, with the help of the endoplasmatic reticulum and the Golgi apparatus, the viruses, mature viruses, are assembled and formed. And finally, the virus is released by a process called exocytosis from the host cell. A virus is always mutating. There are always made some minor errors in the replication process of the virus, which can lead to the formation of mutants. But a new mutation that has been recently described and referred to as the British mutant is associated with a more rapid spread. It is not clear yet whether the disease is more severe, yes or no. It doesn't look very much like it, but we are not sure of this yet. So this is the end of the first part of my presentations of 5, and I invite you very much to watch part 2, where I will discuss the clinical pictures of COVID-19. For so far, I thank you very much for your attention.